Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Ty. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really wonderful guest today. Her name is Sue Erhart. She's an author. She publishes newsletters weekly. She just published her first book, which I can't wait to get into. She puts out blogs, but everything she shares is helping people navigate their own spiritual journey with practical tools to enhance their life. So it's just amazing, and I can't wait to dive in. Thank you so much for being here today, Sue.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. I'm excited to talk about all of this.
Yeah, same. I really love your energy. Like right off the bat, we had some pre-chatter before we pressed record, and I really feel like this is going to be a great conversation. But why don't we start with you sharing a little bit more about what it is that you do and what you offer?
Thanks for the opportunity, Sarah, to chat about that. So first, a little bit about me. So I'm a midlifer. My job is I'm a corporate executive. I'm a general counsel at a very large company, and I have a great job. But I also have a personal passion project around writing and sharing my wisdom. My website is sueerhart.com, and from there I run my weekly newsletter where I share tools to navigate your own spiritual journey. I call it practical spirituality. And I just released, as you said, my first book, Lose Your Critic for Good, which I'll be excited to talk to you about. But I'm really enjoying a midlife passion project of sharing my wisdom.
Yeah, I love the topic of your book already because I think we all can relate to that inner critic. We all have one. And so I definitely can't wait to hear more about that. It's just incredible what you're putting out there. And it's really exciting to get your own book out there because I think that I know a lot of people are publishing, but from what I understand, it's not an easy process. So just getting it out there is like such a big deal. Where can people find that just to start off with?
Any place you purchase books, the book is available. So if you're a Barnes and Noble, if you're an Amazon person, if you're a Kobo person, iBooks, wherever you go, it's there. I think it's actually at Walmart as well. So anywhere you want to go, I personally find Amazon to be the easiest to find and navigate, but you can get it anywhere.
Awesome. Do you by chance have a copy of it that you could like, because this will be also on YouTube. So if you happen to have a copy and show it, but if not, that's no big deal.
So yes, Sarah, I do have a copy of the book. It's right here. I'm really excited about the cover here. Lose Your Critic for Good, a step-by-step process for reclaiming your spirit, because that's what happens when you ditch the critic. And what I really love is that the graphic artist brought in this rope motif, and I love the idea of breaking free of the chains that the critic winds around you and just really letting your spirit express, because that's visually how I see it, is that we are this inner light and these critical thought patterns kind of wind around us and bind us up. And it's our job to break free.
100%. I love all of that so far. I'm a big believer in that it's kind of coming back to that same idea of like based on whatever trauma we may have gotten, it's our responsibility to heal ourselves. And that same thing, it's our responsibility to take back our own power. And so I love that. Before we get into that topic, because I already have so many questions, can you share how you stumbled on this work? I know you said you've shared a little bit that this isn't exactly what you do for your career, but you kind of fell into it. So how did you find this work?
I went on a personal spiritual journey early in life, just trying to, just midlife kind of things, figuring out who I was, what I believed. And I did a lot of reading and researching. And then I also do a lot of writing. As I said, I'm an author and I've done this for decades. I start every single morning with free form writing. And I believe that that writing is inspired. I believe that that writing is personal to me, like it guides me, it helps me. It is literally the words I need to hear. And sometimes that's even my journal prompt. What do I need to hear today? But with a combination of that inspired writing, as well as just different tips and tricks that I've learned, I've assembled a toolkit of things that you can do to help you connect with that authentic spirit, express more authentically, and really live a life of joy. That's what I see as the point of all of this.
That's super interesting. So when you say that you do free form in the morning and you say that you feel like it's inspired and guided, do you feel like that's kind of like maybe in a way like your guide speaking through you maybe or like automatic writing?
I've heard the term automatic writing from other people. I would tell you that in terms of, I call it spirit, the divine, God, the universe. And frankly, I use a lot of different words because I think any one word sort of minimizes what this great big thing is. It's infinite intelligence, it's unconditional love. And yes, I do believe like I'm inspired. So as I'm writing, and I think other writers probably feel this way too, you get into the groove of writing and things start to come forward and things start to work out and you start to just sense that it's going somewhere and it's going somewhere almost in a structured way at times too. So I see that as inspiration.
Yeah, that's another word that comes to me is channeling too in a way. Because when you're channeling, whether it's through writing or like for me it's speaking, like when I do readings with people, words just start coming out of my mouth that I've learned to open up and tap into and just be like, okay, whatever comes through. But it's kind of that same thing with like the keyboard for you, it sounds like, where you're channeling like what tools and messages are coming through to help your audience and help probably yourself at the same time.
Yes, and to be clear, it's often things that I know I need to work through, So, for instance, why am I frustrated about this situation? And then really letting that flow come forward. But there are always nuggets and discoveries and little tidbits that come out of that process. And I do see that as I'm helped and guided in that.
Yeah, and I say it all the time on this podcast, but there's this saying that says we teach what we most need to learn, and it's like we're teaching ourselves as we're teaching other people at the same time. So it's really incredible when you tap into like what you need to learn, and then you realize that this wisdom can also go and help all these other people who need the guidance as well. Especially when you've gone through it yourself first. Now you kind of know what it's like. So then now you're like, okay, I want to help someone so they don't have to fall as hard as I did, so to speak, right? So, what would be some examples of some tangible tools that you would recommend for someone on a spiritual journey?
Writing would be one. I mean, I just see extreme value in sitting down and putting pen to paper. I absolutely believe that there is value because what writing does is it takes amorphous thoughts and then puts them into the words of your language and then lets you visually see them on the page. So they're just as this huge connection pulling out like these background thoughts. So that is a tool that I see as highly effective. And you do not need to be a writer to do it. You can do this in the form of making bulleted lists. You can write and bring your thoughts forward just using phrases and letting it flow. So I see that as one of the key tools on generically on a spiritual journey. But gosh, Sarah, I have lots of tools. And in fact, so my book is like 28 different tools to use to lose your critic so that you sync up with your spirit and navigate your journey from a place of power.
That's awesome. So, writing, would you say that that's the same thing as journaling, or would you say that's a little bit different? The reason I ask is because I love the idea of journaling. Keeping up with journaling is exhausting for me for some reason. I want to do it though, and then you've mentioned free form writing. Do you see writing and journaling as one and the same, or do you have like maybe a different take on it?
So two things. So I will say, so the morning work that I do is free form. I literally sit down with rarely with an agenda or even with a question, and I just say like what needs to come forward, and I start writing. And I'll notice like I'll just start writing some things, and it might be things that are just kind of I'll call it pat, whatever. But then I sort of loosen up and I get a little bit more, and I get a little bit more, and I start to direct it a bit. So that's the free form part of it. But I think on any spiritual journey, and frankly, let's set aside the word spiritual, on any life journey, the goal is to know yourself, to love yourself, and to go live the life that you want to live. And to really know yourself, you really have to get in touch with these background thoughts. So I see that as more structured writing, Sarah. So an example I would give for instance, if you have something that you desire, you have a want, a goal, a passion, whatever it might be, it would be worthwhile to sit down and ask yourself, why do I want this thing? And to write out every single reason that comes forward. That is just rich information all about you. Two people can have the exact same goal and have very different reasons why they want something. And those whys also help you often see your own wounds, which is fabulous because then you have the opportunity to heal those wounds. And when you really get into those why statements, I personally believe, now I'll go into a personal success standpoint, when you have a lot of why statements underneath a goal, I achieve my goals more quickly and more easily because it's almost like I have this scaffolding of success behind the goal that I hold.
Yeah, it's like you built that foundation to anchor into.
Mhm.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, but the way you're explaining writing, it sounds a lot more like to me, and I'm over here taking notes, by the way, because I'm always learning from all the guests I speak with. But for me, like that just sounds way more fluid than when people talk about journaling, it just sounds so like structured and cookie cutter and like almost like there's no, I don't know. I guess for me, I think now that I'm like just talking it out, I feel like to me it's like I'm answering questions on a test, you know? And so then I'm like, what's the best answer? And you know what I mean? Versus just tapping in, right? It sounds like it's just kind of connecting with yourself on like a no expectations level.
Exactly. It's not a have to. Okay. I mean, at any time we characterize something as a have to or should, our spirits are going to naturally resist doing that. Our spirits are freedom lovers. Our spirits know what is best for us. So when you come at it with ideas of have to and should, your natural spirit's going to stand strong and say, heck no, we're not doing this. So that's one of the things I would tell you that I've used throughout my life is that anytime I'm characterizing as a requirement, a must, a should, a need, an ought to, or someone else's idea about what I should be doing, I know to resist that, let it go, and reframe it in terms of what I want or what I think. And I think our spirits are our souls is what I call mine. I think my soul is very crafty. And I think she does a great job of getting me to say, quit listening to other people and what they think you should be doing. Start listening and hear of what you want to be doing and what you think is best for you.
Yeah, I love that on so many levels. But like for me personally, so I just little spiritual side note, I grew up very Christian. And then in my teens, I kind of broke away from it just because I had too many questions. And then I tried other religions and it always just felt like putting on a shoe that just wouldn't fit. And you know, now my beliefs are just too big. Like I can't put them in a box. And I've learned that that's okay, you know, that everyone has different belief systems and it's what works for them. And when you find the thing that resonates, then it's like you're in alignment. So it sounds like what you're really suggesting is, you know, yeah, we could take different ideas and tips from other people, but I love that idea of reframing it. In fact, I wrote down reframe, like reframe writing, because that's making me look at it a completely different way because it's not necessarily because I know it's so funny because I teach this too. I mean, a lot of the times in my readings, I get information around do it your own way. Like, don't try and do the cookie cutter thing because what works for someone else may not work for you and likely won't work for you. It's finding your thing and your path. And so it sounds like what you teach with all your tools is how to make it your own. It's like the guidelines or the foundational piece, if that makes sense. And that's kind of what I'm taking from it.
Yes, what I say over and over in my newsletter and in my writing is that you choose what you believe. I'm here to help you examine your beliefs, think about what beliefs are helpful and useful to you, reframe parts of your life, use life to help you better know yourself and love yourself. You know, ways that you can, what I say, communicate with the divine, whether you call it prayers or intentions. I mean, I teach all of those things, but your beliefs are your beliefs, and it doesn't matter. I think foundationally, all of us walking a spiritual journey start out and say, who am I? I mean, that's kind of our first question. And then we're like, and then what else is out there? And, and all of us in one way or another are walking a journey asking those two questions.
Yeah, 100%. It's like either you're sleepwalking and that's just where you're unaware and not doing any of this work, or you're just starting the questions of, well, wait a second, what else is out there? And that's what started my spiritual journey. Very similarly, was I think it was actually during COVID. I just thought, oh my God, what do I believe? But that does, it starts this whole journey of figuring out who you are, your beliefs, your values, what you want out of life, what you don't want out of life that you're bringing into your life. I mean, it really helps you kind of look at everything from a bigger picture. So that's amazing. Do you feel like you found your purpose, or your gifts or your magic doing this work?
Absolutely. This is when I'm writing, whether it's my book, my newsletter, I do some written course material. When I do that work, I lose time. I can do it for hours on my day off. I'm happy to write and write and write. I enjoy it. I love it. It excites me. I lean into it. And to me, something that brings you joy, something you're excited to do, something that feels fulfilling as you're doing it is your path. And it's a gift. It's an absolute gift to have something like that in your life.
I like to say, like, my personal definition of purpose is that it's a combination of finding what lights you up, that's fulfilling, but also gives back to the world in some capacity. It's like
Mhm.
that both and so you summed that up beautifully.
I think the one thing that I would add on that, Sarah, is that if you have an activity that lights you up, you're giving back to the world. And so the example I guess I'll use is if you've got someone who is just in love with stamp collecting and spends 3 hours staring at those stamps and feels joyous and happy and fulfilled, I think that's giving back. So I just want to put that maybe little asterisk on it. I agree with you, but I think just that positive energy is enough.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you so much for bringing highlights to that, because, and I'll say the same thing. Like, even, a painter is giving back to the world. And the example I use for that is they sell their painting. Someone buys it, puts it up on their living room wall, and it inspires them every day. But it's not like a direct thing. And in this case, with your stamp collector, it's like you are so connected with yourself that now you're going out into the world and being your best self. And then that energy is contagious. So it's not about, and I do talk about that on this podcast. It's not some big grandiose thing that most people think purpose is.
And I want to just hit on that because I've noticed a lot in my corporate career. You have women who start on a passion project and think that it has to be of service to others to be worthwhile, and really try to force themselves into that service mentality, which they may enjoy. I mean, they may like, but I also kind of want to break down that limiting belief a little bit and say, following your passion and doing what feels exciting to you could be purpose enough. And you don't need the addition to justify doing that.
Yeah, that I love that. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, also, again, coming back to that, being able to show up as your best self when you're lit up and doing what you love. I mean, not only that, but when you're able to be so authentic with yourself, and just obviously just on fire, like your soul's on fire, right? Now you're giving other people permission to get curious about what puts their soul on fire, which is also a form of a purpose as well. So yeah, I will say a lot of people who, especially in the spiritual realm, do tend to gravitate towards that service industry mindset. And, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, but you do, like you said, you just have to, like, you don't want to do it because you feel like you have to. It's not a job. You want to do it because it fulfills you. And then being open to being curious about what else is there. So I mean, tarot found me. Literally, I didn't go looking for it, and I love it. I love like giving readings to people, whether it's through entertainment where I get hired for parties, or it's one-on-one and I'm helping people detangle some of their blocks. I love it. It lights me up so much. And for me it's like, okay, that's it, but I also feel like there's more, and I think that there's that other idea that it could be multifaceted. There could be elements to your purpose that's different niches. It's not even the same thing. So it's so much bigger than what I think some people try to put in a box and say, oh, okay, this is it. It's like, well, is it just that? So I'm really glad that you pointed out all the other arrays it could show up in. So what is and this may be something that you have in your book. Do you have like a common theme that you see with people who deal with their inner critic that you see more often than not, or like a thread that kind of pops up a lot? Do you have a common struggle that comes up?
Yeah, let's talk about the critic because I mean, I lived with one for a lot of years and very deliberately did the work to overcome. And just to be clear, my belief is that a critic is simply a habit of thought. That's it. It's a habit of thought. And as a habit of thought, it can be broken down and it can be changed. And there's tremendous opportunity when you do so. But first, I want to talk about how the critic shows up in life, because I think there are some different ways that I see the critic showing up in a lot of people's lives. So the first one is the very obvious one. You're highly critical of yourself and of others. Okay. You're just a critical person. That's just the normal one. The second way that people have what I call critic mentality, or the critic shows up in their life, is it's the critic of omission. And this is the critic who says, I see what's missing. I see the lack. I see what's off. Like they're very much focused on what isn't there, the omission, and not what is there, not the positive things to celebrate. So that could be a critical habit of thought, is that you skew towards whatever's not there versus what's there. The other way I see the critic show up is with downplaying behaviors. And again, these are often habits or limiting beliefs where people keep their light small. They downplay their natural strengths. They fail to speak up for themselves. They fail to self-celebrate. I mean, all different ways where they just sort of continually downplay themselves. That's a critical mentality of just saying, and sometimes it even we think it's good, like, oh, don't mind me, don't worry about me. I'm okay. This is enough. That's critic mindset. Okay. That's downplaying. The fourth way I see a critic show up with people is what I call power transfers. And this is when you live your life doing what is expected of you versus what you want or what you believe. Okay. So these are the shoulds, musts, ought to, the rules of society, all of those things. If you attach yourself to those, you're in a critical mindset. That's the critic as well, telling you, you have to do this, you got to show up here, you got to go to this event. I mean, that's the critic as well. And then the last category where I see the critic show up for people is what I call harsh judgments. And this is when it's not just that you're critical, but that literally you cast either yourself or another person as like outside of the norm or accepted. I mean, like you literally almost like condemn that person and say, absolutely. So it's just very, very harsh criticism. So critic shows up in a lot of different ways. I think every single one of us has some form of critic running around. And it's just a matter of being more aware of when you're going into the critic.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
I love how you broke down each of the different kinds of critics, because I think most people think of that judgment, right? Most people just think of that part of them that's always kind of like giving them a hard time, basically. I think it's what most people think of when they hear inner critic. But then you just broke down so much more. I mean, there's the lack mentality, right? Which is where you're assuming, it's where you focus on what you're lacking versus what you're abundant of. And but that's so easy to do because we're so we like to compare what we have to offer versus what other people have to offer. And it's so funny because again, in my readings, I have a card that goes over that. That's just like, hone on your gifts let them hone on theirs, and now we can collaborate. And then the downplaying limiting beliefs, I think we all know what that one refers to. The power transfers. That one is big. That's more for those that are very conditioned or programmed into how they were raised, but a lot of us are, especially when it comes to authoritative or parental figures, learning how to choose you versus choosing the pattern. The last one, it made me think of shame, that harsh one. And usually when we shun someone, right, because we're so harsh, that's usually coming from a deep place of our own shame. So it's kind of a all encompassing. So I've never really thought of inner critic being all those different levels, but the way you explained it, I can see how they all are. So how do you become more aware of that? Especially like many of us, I think we all probably can see how we plug into each of these critics, maybe some more than others, right? How do we combat those? How do we become more aware?
So the book truly is, when I say it's a step-by-step process for reclaiming your spirit. There are 28 chapters designed to be read, one a day, and then there's an exercise to be done with each of it. And it's a very practical, doable exercise that you can do on your own, doesn't cost anything, very easy. Okay, so I will tell you, like the overarching process is to walk through and be very deliberate, and there are lots of different tools and ways to do that. But what it starts with, and this is what I start the book, is number one, recognizing that that critic isn't you. And many people with a critic think that that voice that is saying, you have to do this, you have to show up this way, you have to accept that invitation, you need to do better, you need this, you did terrible on this. I mean, people actually think that all of those thoughts and ideas that are bombarding them are them. And the first thing you really have to do is say, that's not your soul, okay? Your soul, your spirit has one language, and it's love. That's it, okay? So all that other crap that's going on, that's stuff outside of you that you've attached to and given meaning to, and you have to sit and really accept that that's not you. And then you set an intent to start releasing from that. And just to be clear, your soul speaks one language, love. So the first thing is really just an awareness that you're listening to these things outside of yourself, and that you've got this core inner wisdom that you could be listening to for guidance. And many people who I've worked with have taken, and I was one of these people for a lot of years, they have a lot of pride in following the rules. Okay, they have a lot of they've associated a lot of their goodness with following the rules. And so these are people who need to disassociate from those rules and those outer expectations and really kind of regroup back onto their center and say, no, I am good. That's inherent, I believe, in every human being. I am good, and it's up to me to really tap into that inner wisdom.
That's a really fascinating way to look at the inner critic. And it makes me kind of think of that. A lot of people will call it ego in the spiritual community, right? It's more of just the thoughts. And I'm not sure if you read the book. Oh, what's it called? The Power of Now, I believe, by Eckhart Tolle. Is that one that you've read? And he talks about that, like how the mind, like it's meant to be helpful, but unfortunately when it spins and it goes off goes off and does its own thing, it's harmful. And then of course in that book he talks about how we are the soul within. We're the watchers, we're the observers. And this is a book I just recently read, so I'm like, it's super fresh. And I love that idea because it does help you think about dissociating from those thoughts, like observing them, because our mind doesn't shut up. That's one thing that he does talk about in the book, is our mind doesn't shut up. If you just stop and just watch it go, it just spins and spins and spins and spins, and then you're able to kind of just dissociate. But just starting with the fact that knowing that that's not you, that's not your like your soul and your spirit. I mean, I think ultimately, I think he touches on this too, it's coming from the part of us that just wants to stay safe, which comes back to like the old days, right? Of like, oh, there's a tiger in the woods, I got to be careful and whatever. But now it's so much more complex than that. Just that's a great way to break it down, and I really appreciate that.
And I would jump in and I'd say, first and foremost, I think our minds and our egos are fabulous, wonderful, wonderful things. I believe there are goodness behind both of them. I believe our minds are largely unsupervised. And to the extent you just bring a little bit of awareness and a little bit of positivity, you can really begin to leverage your mind to your personal success, goals, whatever you want your life to be. You can really turn it from something that skews and spins negatively to moving it to something that's is positive and really, really supports you. So I think the mind is an ally and an asset, and it's fabulous. And I agree completely with you, Sarah, that the ego, again, this wonderful gift of spirit, an ego to keep us safe. Okay. So the ego is going to say, follow all the rules so that you can conform and fit in and be loved. That's not a bad rule of life when you're a baby trying to fit in. I mean, there's goodness behind it. It just is at some point, there's no longer the need for that. And you can lean into your authenticity and your authentic self and make decisions for yourself. And the ego simply becomes less relevant in your life.
Ah, so good. I am definitely going to be picking up a copy of your book because I'm just loving all this information. And, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily new, but the way that you break it down, I think, is what makes it more tangible for those of us who want that more grounded. And again, I said this in the very beginning before we started recording. It's like you're taking this esoteric, often vague, not vague, but abstract thing of spirituality that's really hard to tether and like make sense of. Like when you try, like for me, when I explain it to people, I know how it makes me feel, so I know I'm on the right track. But it's like, how do I really get grounded in it when it's something that feels so esoteric? And so I like these tools because it really makes it tangible, and it sounds like it's a good way to ground, to like recenter. And so I will definitely be getting a copy of that book for sure. And I think listeners, if you're feeling what I'm feeling, this sense of grounded and tangible, these tools that are really helpful, I mean, I highly recommend doing the same. From here, I would love to shift to what I like to call synchronicity story time. It's one of my favorite segments because I feel like it's talking about real life magic, right?
Mhm.
Do you have any fun synchronistic stories that you could share?
I have so many, Sarah. I mean, I feel like I enjoy synchronicities all the time. I feel like spirit is always trying to communicate with me and get my attention. One that really showed up for me in a big way was about a year ago. My son and I went to Chicago for a few days. Before we went there, the week before, I had made us dinner reservations for each night we were going to be there. I believe it's Pam Grout E Squared book, which is, I don't know if you've read, it's a great little book that encourages you to ask spirit for signs and to do so in a fun and kind of frivolous way. And I do this every once in a while. So I was rereading her book while we were in Chicago, and I said, okay, I want to see a yellow butterfly. I think that's actually one of the things she suggests in the book. But I was like, just feeling kind of frivolous and fun, and did that. So on one of the evenings when we wanted to go to dinner, the restaurant was about a mile and a half away, and I decided we were going to walk. And my teenage son was not thrilled about walking. He wanted to Uber, but I said, no, I just really feel like I want to get out on a walk. Let's walk. So we walked, Sarah, and we even were kind of going into some parts of town I was very unfamiliar with, was feeling a little sketch, but nonetheless, we kept walking. And we came along a side of a highway, and I turned to the side, and there was a giant mural of a yellow butterfly. Enormous. Okay. So I snap a picture of it. We continue on. And this is where the story gets even better. So we continue on and we get to the restaurant that I had made a reservation at just within the last week. The restaurant is not only closed, there's a dumpster outside and it's completely been emptied out. And it's clearly been closed for a long period of time. Yet I was able to make the reservation that caused me to walk from the place we were staying to there next to that yellow butterfly. So this is the power of spirit. It's amazing. There are infinite possibilities, and I have situations like that happen to me all the time like that.
Oh my gosh, that story gave me chills. And I love that. Like, and one of the reasons I love synchronicity stories is, I mean, I know it's not like we're not, as the listeners, we're not seeing the physical evidence, but just in the story itself, there's the evidential finding of like, hey, this asking you shall receive, and this is what happened. And it actually makes me think of a small synchronicity on my end that was also kind of frivolous and fun. I had a guest on, and she was going over crystals and things like that, but she did talk a little bit about like mythical creatures. And I've heard different things in the spiritual realm about mythical creatures, about how like, oh, they're there, but they're on different planes or whatever else. Some of us can see us. I don't know. The logical person in me has a hard time with that. But I have like a whimsical side. I'm like, maybe. And so after talking to her, she was explaining how something about getting like a little fairy house was like I don't remember why, but she suggested getting a fairy house. So I thought, you know what? Okay, spirit universe, if fairies are real and I'm supposed to get a fairy house, let me see a fairy house while I'm out and about today. Like just random, right? And so at the time I was delivering for DoorDash as my day job. So I was doing deliveries. I was kind of going around my town and stuff. So of course I was kind of keeping my eyes open. Maybe someone will have a fairy house in their garden or something, and didn't see anything. And then I was on my way home and I had to stop by the Dollar Tree to get a card for something, like a Christmas card or whatever. And I just had this weird feeling when I parked. I was like, this thought came to my mind that said, this is where you're going to find your fairy house. I was like, okay, random. Went in to go look at my cards, and over by the cards, so I guess it wasn't, well, I was just saying Christmas. I think it was a birthday card, but it was like it was around springtime. So there was like different arts and crafts. And so I have an 8-year-old. I thought, oh, okay, there's like a coloring craft here. Let me look at that. And as I'm looking at it, something told me to look down, and on the very bottom shelf were a ton of different kinds of little fairy houses. And as if there was any kind of like question whether or not, because I was like, well, it could be a birdhouse. Like, is it a fairy house? The very bottom of it says fairy house right here. And I literally found it within like 4 hours of me just saying, if I'm supposed to see a fairy house, let me see a fairy house. And then there one was randomly.
I will tell you, and I firmly believe this, that the synchronicities in my life skyrocketed once I did the work to lose my critic. In fact, I think, like when I think about my spirit, my soul, I think the number one wedge between me and my spirit, guiding me, giving me intuitive hits, whatever it might be, was my critical mindset. And, once you really do that, I mean, you just tap this power. That's amazing.
That makes so much sense on a lot of different levels. One of my biggest blocks that I'm like continuously working on is trusting myself. And I know that that's coming, that the distrust comes from my inner critic. And I mean, I've had several people tell me things like, you're a medium, right? You have more gifts, right? But I stick with my tarot because I trust it. And I have that like tangible tool. But I've had people be like, take away the tarot. It's kind of like a crutch. And I'm like, no, I can't. Because then I do think I block myself. My inner critic's like, you don't know what you're doing. You can't tap into anything higher than without your tools. So then I don't. And it's kind of that same idea if you don't believe that synchronicities can happen, your critic's going to blind you from it, basically, is what it sounds like. So that makes a lot of sense.
I am a firm believer in the use of intentions. Again, call them intentions, call them prayers, but a very deliberate decision has massive power. I regularly, when I encounter a situation where I feel like I have a block, I set an intent, and I'm very laissez-faire about it. I sort of say like, okay, I'm ready to surrender this block. Let's get it out of here, out of my life. I'm done. I'm ready to let it go. I mean, that might be an intention setting by me. I'm very much like that. I feel like I've got a good open line of communication with my higher power. And that's how we go. But I'd encourage you to set an intent and see what happens.
I will do that. And along with taking the journey of your book, because I really, in fact, I'm going out of state in 2 days, and part of me is like, I wonder how quickly Amazon could get it to me. Like maybe I could get it in time to read it on the plane.
Well, you can get the ebook and you could be reading immediately on your phone on the Kindle app.
Oh, okay. Sold. So my final question that I'd like to end with, what is something that you'd like to share with the audience? I know you've shared so much wisdom already. So I guess something more like, what's a legacy that you'd like to leave behind with all the work that you put out there, your books, your network, your newsletters, your blogs? What's something that you want the audience to take from our conversation today and the work that you're doing?
Well, I'm definitely someone who likes to be helpful. I enjoy that. And I also like to give people really tangible things that they can do today. So I'm going to talk about briefly here one tool from my book that I think you could start today to change your life. And it's one of my most powerful tools. I share it lots of places. I talk about it in the book, but I would love to have more people doing this. Most of us run our lives and run our days from a to-do list. All right. We make a list of things. And again, we're probably saying, have to do this, got to do this, right? So we're making a list of things that we think we need to do. And when we make that to-do list, let's be honest, what we are capturing is a list of activities that we do not want to do. Because if we wanted to do them, we'd be doing the activity. We would remember the activity. Okay. So this to-do list is a list of things that we think we should do or are required to do. Again, so almost like this kind of critic mentality, and it exists outside of us. And then a whole bunch of us, with particularly those with the critic, work our whole day from that to-do list. And when we get to the end of the day, we feel good or we feel bad based on how many things are checked off on that list. Okay. So we give our power to that list. Lots of people do this. They start their weeks, saying, these are all the things I have to do. Okay. So I encourage people, get rid of the to-do list. All right. Get rid of the to-do list. I'll talk about how you get through life without one. But what I teach people to do is to start a new habit that I call logging. You create a logbook. I've got mine right here. And what you do is you start a process where you start your day and you log everything you do. And I often log how I felt. Now, the point of this is that you want to get your energy and yourself focused on progress, not deficits. Okay. And you want that progress to grow. You want to retrain your mind to think positively, to look at what's done, to notice good things. I notice lots of good things in my logbook. And you want to really focus on you and what you want. And this is a way, a very, very practical way. If you did a logbook every day for a month, your mind would start to be retrained to look for things. You would, in fact, be somewhere and say, oh, this is a really good thing, or I'm feeling really good right now. I want to make sure I put it down in my logbook. Like, had lunch with Sarah. It was so fun. And that's how I manage my day. I go around logging and particularly looking for positive things, noting them, savoring them, collecting them in my notebook, things that people say that I think are really good. And it's completely retrained my mind out of looking at the lack or what went wrong with something. We've all done it. You wake up in the middle of the night worrying about something that went wrong, and your brain starts focusing on all the things that went right. So it's a great tool. It's easy. It's free. Anybody can do this with any notebook. But logging to me has just completely changed my life. It's part of my success story is that I log, and it's been great. Now, everybody asks me, well, what do you do with those life tasks that we all have, right? Okay. So you got to schedule the dentist. You got to pay your taxes. You got stuff, right? I tend to keep those on a list that is not visible to me. Okay. It's not what I work from. This list does not define me. It is not the boss of me. But I put things on there, normal life things like dentist, but then I always put next to it exactly what I want. Like, why am I doing that? I want clean and healthy teeth. Okay. This isn't a requirement. This isn't a put upon. This is me saying, here's what I want. And so I'm putting dentist on the list. And it completely reframes and renegotiates your power with the world.
Okay, yeah, that's really powerful. That's amazing. And one thing I want to point out is what you do when you're logging, it brings you into the present. Because you're focusing on what's happening right now, and then you're of course focusing on the positives, but yeah, it really brings you to what's happening right now instead of what needs to be happening.
Sarah, it does so many things. It goes back to the beginning of our conversation. It takes those amorphous thoughts that you might not be recognizing and pulls them down into words. That's a wonderful thing. Think of that like a manifestation of something good. It prolongs good things. It generates good emotions. Frankly, it's this terrific thing that you can peruse and say, like, what was I doing on January 28th? And you look through, and there's so many little tidbits in life that I would have forgotten about, but for my logbook. I mean, little things like where I overhear my kids talking about something and they're laughing, or a time when I walked into a room and I felt confident. I mean, that's the kind of thing, like when I'm here at work and I have a day like that, I write it down. I say, I felt confident when I did this. And The next thing I would say is everything you log is a nugget about you, the true you. And as I said earlier, you can't love yourself till you know yourself. So know yourself, love yourself. And it's just this awesome feedback loop. It really is.
Yeah, like truly, I'm taking so many notes from this. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. This has been such a great conversation. So if our listeners want to work with you, so I know that you shared how to find your book, but like your newsletter or your blog, do you have a website or social media or something that others can follow or reach out to you?
Yes, easiest way to find everything about me, SueErhart.com. My name, it's just super easy. You can sign up for my free newsletter. It gets delivered to your inbox every Sunday morning. It's a great way. I've got some other offerings if you want to go a little bit further. And right there on my website, you can find a link to the book and sail right through to get that.
Perfect. I will be sure to put all of that in the show notes. So if listeners want to find your book or your newsletter or any of the things you offer, they can find that easily. And thank you again for joining me today. This conversation is just full of so much powerful wisdom, and I'm just so grateful that you're here.
Sarah, I feel the same way. And when I'm done, I'm going to log. Had an awesome conversation with Sarah.
I might start that on my first log. Had an awesome conversation with Sue. Nothing like the present to start, right?
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.